Yo, what up, everybody? This is Nothing But Bangers, aka MBB, aka Bangers, aka I've got a interesting deck here, and there's a lot to take away. So let me start just getting into some of the other variants of this deck and kind of the reason why I chose to build it the way that I did. So the deck that we're going to be talking about in today's video, and I've got some games that I've also, recorded for you to go ahead and see how the deck is actually played as well. But we're going to be talking about Pidgeot EX. Now, Pidgeot EX is really interesting because it does have quite a bit of bulk. It survives just about everything in the game except like a Charizard and maybe a Zapdos with 3 heads. So there's a lot of plus sides to the card. However, we have not been able to figure out the best partner for the deck. So basically, let me talk about the first place variants of this deck so far and kind of run you through these first. So there's 3 first places according to Pokemon Meta, and there's a few other like top 4s and top 32s and so on. But let's talk about this variant first. This is actually probably the closest variant to the one that I built. But when you look at this deck list, you see a 1-1 split of EX and non-EX Pidgeot. You got the double Marshadow, the double Hitmonlee, and then the 1-1 Mankey and Primeape. Then you also got double Giovanni, as well as the double X Speed is kind of the rest of the trainers. You'll notice there's no Sabrina, and that's probably because they're playing Pidgeot, right? So they're probably thinking, hey, I'll just get value out of my Pidgeot. Again, it's hard to tell like the level of these tournaments if they're not Ursi or Pocket Legends League, just to be real honest. Maybe a couple of other tournaments are pretty good too. Now this variant is a lot different, right? You've got Pidgeot EX, you've got Mew EX, you've got Elgime, right? And then Behem. And again, these are very interesting Pokemon because they're all kind of like synergizing with the idea that you're going to have a full bench. But I'm just going to straight up tell you, one of the first things that's going to happen when you start playing this deck is that people are going to stop benching things, right? They're going to not fill up their bench as much. So that's a little bit of a curveball too. You have to kind of adjust for that. But you see the 1 Giovanni, 1 Sabrina, 1 Potion, 1 Flute, and 1 X Speed. Now, the last deck list that we'll look at here before we get into my variant is going to have Zebstrika. And again, like when you see Hitmonlee and Zebstrika, it's to counter the Magikarps, right? And then there's some pretty good synergy with Poke Flute. If you're able to, knock out some Magikarps, it could probably speed up the game a little bit. So there's that. But when you take a look at this deck list, double Pidgeot EX, double X Speed, 1 Flute, double Giovanni, 1 Dedenne, double Zebstrika, and then 2 Zebras, right? Blitzels. So pretty cool decks. So let's get to my variant. So this is my variant of Pidgeot EX. And again, let's just walk through some of these card choices. So obviously 2/2/2 Pidgeot EX, right? The whole line. I don't play the base Pidgeot. The reason why I have Farfetch'd in this deck list is because there are times when people stop benching things, but you want to apply pressure to the active spot. And that's what Farfetch'd does. Plus, Farfetch'd does punish some people that are playing, 40 HP or 50 HP basics. And, again, it's a way to chip things, which is another very important part of this deck. You are going to have to chip a lot of things to make sure that your math is right. So, like an example is, if people are playing around you benching, or playing around benching things, then you're going to need to chip damage with Hitmonlee. You might even have to chip damage with, Pidgeotto. You might have to chip damage with Marshadow and then retreat it so that way it doesn't get knocked out, so you can still revenge KO something. And then obviously Farfetch'd. So keep that in mind, like when you're trying to play this deck, is that there might just be people that just play one Pokemon and that's all they go with because they see fighting and they see Hitmonlee. So very important to know that. The reason why I've got double Hitmonlee and double Marshadow is just to have some alternative attackers that are still pretty cheap and they're 1 prize attackers. So there's going to be quite a few games that you're going to be able to line up a 1 prize, 2 prize game, right? Where they're going to have to knock out 3 Pokemon, but 2 of them are going to be base, and then the last one they have to knock out is that really thick Pidgeot EX, hopefully. As far as trainers, what I started to notice when I was testing this deck is that Giovanni is definitely needed to make sure that you're hitting specific breakpoints in some scenarios. They're probably going to come up in the games. And then Sabrina as well is a good way to make sure that you can go ahead and keep things, keep your opponent on their toes. You can play defensive Sabrina, you can play aggressive Sabrina, and then there's going to be times where people like Gyarados players are going to put their Magikarp in the active, and you're going to have to Sabrina something out and then Hitmonlee it from by putting it on the bench. So there's just all sorts of applications of Sabrina. One Poke Flute, and the thing about Poke Flute is it's so bad most of the time until you're winning with it, right? Like you definitely don't want to play two, in my opinion, because a lot of the time, like, it's just a dead draw early game. And so some of the cards that I'm not including in the deck list are Aerodactyl and the Primeape line, right? The reason why I'm not playing it, the Aerodactyl line, even though I would love to fit it in, is that I just don't think that there's arguably space for it. And then the other thing about this deck list that I would also point out is that Primeape, and Mankey just kind of feel like they may be dead draws. They may be just dead cards at some points of the game. So I wanted to eliminate as many dead cards as possible, because I'm already playing some dead cards like a Poke Flute, and then obviously a stage 2 deck that just might break on its own. So, but anyways, let's get to the games, and again, I hope you enjoy the deck. As far as to like whether or not I would take this to a tournament, I wouldn't feel bad about taking this to a tournament, but I would want to make sure that I jam a lot of games so I'm aware of like all the different matchups. The matchups, Pikachu's not terrible, obviously, because Pidgeot survives Pikachu and can one-shot it in a lot of cases, and then it can one-shot Zapdos as well, depending on the bench situation. Mewtwo, that's where math with the Giovanni can come in if you're not able to put any damage on the Mewtwo beforehand. So full bench, and then Pidgeot EX plus Giovanni is going to deal 150. And Mew EX is something that you can take care of as well a lot of the time. And even putting 30 damage on it puts them in a bind, because if they have a bench Pokemon, you're dealing 100, so that knocks out the Mew EX. As far as like Gyarados, you should be fine because you have Hitmonlee, and Gyarados can't one-shot Pidgeot EX. Now, there are some weird interactions there, so you got to kind of be mindful of that because Greninja's a thing. Obviously, Dredagon as well. But you can line things up to where, potentially you're Hitmonleeing the Gyarados before it comes in, and then you revenge hit it with Marshadow, so you're kind of 2-for-1ing them in some cases. So there's a lot of different scenarios there. But anyways, let's get to the games. I know that's what you're here for. Okay, let's get into a game here. Looks like we're going first, and I didn't talk about the Serebii matchup, right? Serebii is interesting because you probably have good math in a lot of cases, and in scenarios like this where you see an execute, obviously you have the opportunity to Giovanni and Farfetched it. Just kind of depends on how things work out here. They may just retreat out of it, which, or they may choose to do a defensive Sabrina. Usually these decks don't have red card, so I don't feel terrible about just like leaving this in, so I'm probably just going to pass. Usually red card, they just don't have space, so I would rather like not give them the option to Sabrina out of this spot. And if they don't have any other active Pokemon and they can't Sabrina, and they don't have red card, then I can just win on the spot here. So there's the Serebii. I don't mind them retreating, right? It's one of those things that definitely I don't mind. It's gonna be weird though if I can't get to another Pokemon here. So let's just go ahead and start putting stuff on our bench here. And we'll go ahead and take care of this first knockout here. Again, like Serebii can just flip double heads and put us in a weird spot, so not great. Would love to draw Marshadow. That could definitely help us be in a better spot, but this is definitely going to be a tricky game if they flip double heads, right? And, there's not really much you can do there. I mean, sometimes they just have it, and you just kind of just shake their hand, and that's okay, right? They might even get another execute right here and then have executor ready to go next turn. So there's all sorts of ways that this could go terribly wrong. But yeah, sometimes, I mean, hey, it's just a coin flip. I mean, hey, you're putting your opponent on a coin flip. Okay, so 1 heads. So drawing Marshadow would be fantastic. If they don't have Erica, we can go ahead and steal the game there. We top deck a research here, so pretty solid card to draw here. So it looks like we're not going to find what we need immediately. But we can go ahead and start putting some damage on this Serebii. Now, again, you assume that they're playing around Pidgeot already. You can already see our opponent trying to do that. So they're just going to probably... Okay, so that's interesting. So they're probably just going to go ahead and not put anything on their bench. And they happen to play Potion, so there's that. But, you know, hey... there's a lot of scenarios where we can still squeak this game out. But we're definitely going to need to find Pidgeotto. That's going to be a very important priority here. And then they flipped double heads here. They only needed 1, so... but you can see them actively playing around Hitmonlee and Pidgeot EX. So, yeah, that's just something you're going to have to deal with. So we do find the Pidgeotto. So we're going to go ahead and research now. And, man, that Marshadow is just a little late, isn't it? It's just a little late. So we'll play the Pidgey down as well. And, you know, hey, we're just going to try to get ourselves in a position where, you know, hey, maybe they have to flip a bunch of good coin flips. Right now our Pidgeotto, or our Pidgeot EX, is only dealing 100. So they're going to Sabrina, which is a little risky. Right? Like, you can almost argue that, like, there's not really an absolute, like, good reason to Sabrina there. And realistically, I could just put in the Pidgey. Because, you know, hey, it could be where the Marshadow ends up, you know, playing a factor. Oh, wow. So they just flipped 4 tails. So, okay, we're going to be able to start getting in damage with our Pidgeot EX. And they're going to be in pretty rough shape here, because we do have the X speeds. But they would have needed double Sabrina, is kind of the way it's looking, regardless. I'm not going to Poke Flute, because I don't think it... Let's see. So if I'm dealing 30 right now, yeah, it doesn't really make a difference, right? I don't think it makes a difference. The only way it would make a difference is if they Erica... and don't play. I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, even if they Erica, they still are in range, right? Like Erica Potion, I guess, would be the worst case, but I have Poke Flute, so they would need. Yeah, there's not really any math, right? But yeah, them not hitting any of the coin flips. But hey, I mean, the other thing is they're going to get 5 coin flips here, so if they get 4 heads out of the 5 flips. Since they just flipped 4 tails, then we're cooked, right? We're in really bad shape. So, but again, like, there's not really much you can do there. You just kind of play the game, and, you know, you just kind of live and die with the coin flips. Yeah, so looks like we're going to get there. But again, you can see our opponent actively playing around a lot of our cards here. So yeah. All right, so that's a game there. Okay, getting into another game here. So we're going second this game. Looks like we're going into a dark deck. So they probably see fighting, and they're probably going to try to play around their bench as well. That seems to be, like, again, a common theme for you to get prepared for, right? Like, just assume opponents are going to play around as much as they can, like playing anything on their bench, because they're just anticipating Hitmonlee. And like it's a double-edged sword, right? You're kind of getting punished on 2 ends, right? Because you're playing Pidgeot EX as well as the Hitmonlee. So this opponent's actually going to play they're going to just play stuff on their bench anyways. So good for us. And then we end up drawing the Pidgeotto. Honestly, I am not going to go ahead and rip this research because we kind of have everything we need already. I'm going to put damage on this Venipede here. The Venipede is going to be the way that they deal, and the Scolipede eventually, is going to be the way they deal big numbers, right? And with the Coughings, you're going to be able to Koga those Pokemon back into your hand. So I have no problem going ahead and kind of like, I guess, trading in a sense. And, you know, hey, giving up that damage on Hitmonlee. One really important interaction for people who may not be familiar, I know a lot of you are, is if a Pokemon is knocked out by poison damage, Marshadow does not deal 100. So that is something that's very important to know. And opponents will actively play around that. They'll let you get KO'd by poison specifically for that reason. So definitely be aware of that. What I'm going to do is try to find a Marshadow here. That would be fantastic. Unfortunately, we don't. And so now we're going to be really, you know, really hoping that Pidgeot EX can kind of sweep. And we're probably going to need Pokeflute or Giovanni to make our math right, the way that things are looking. But right here, they're going to have no problem, you know, just taking the knockout with Hitmonlee. And, you know, again, you just kind of look at the situation. You know we're going to be behind. So, you know, this could be a situation where we could get into some trouble if they go ahead and get to that. Oh man, Marshadow's just always a turn late, isn't it? Always a turn late, isn't it? That's so funny. I don't believe we're scared of anything, and chipping this into range is to our benefit. Honestly, if I Sabrina, I should have Sabrina'd first. Yeah, Sabrina is a solid play here because it's going to make them have to adjust their game plan of getting poison on my Pidgeot. So I am not going to go ahead and evolve yet, just in case they try to poison me and give me more damage. Now, if they happen to have another Wheezing, you know, if they have both Wheezing in the top 12 cards, then, you know, that just kind of is what it is. Because they could definitely, you know, okay, so they have the Leaf, which means that they're not going to be able to Koga, which means that we're going to be able to evolve away this poison here. And that's really huge. So it looks like they don't have I think it's Whirlipede is the stage 1. Okay, they do have it. Okay. So there's the Whirlipede, right? So they're going to poison me. They're going to hit me for damage. And again, they're going to need that second Wheezing. That's going to be the thing that they're going to need. Because we already have the Pidgeot. So we're going to go ahead and put down this Pidgey on the bench. We're going to, you know, go ahead and go up to Pidgeot. And hey, if they happen to have the Wheezing, the Koga, you know, they're just better than us, and that's okay, right? The other thing to be aware of here is we're in danger of getting two-shot by the Scolipede as well, right? Because I think it deals 70. So that's something to be aware of as well. So I might have to do some switching here into Pidgeotto. Put some damage on it. Because Scolipede has 140 HP, so not currently in range. I have 8 cards in my deck. So they drew the second Wheezing. So they probably just top decked it, or else they would have kept Coughing in the active, right? So there's the Scolipede. So they would have had the Scolipede Wheezing thing that I was scared of. So there's the 70 damage. So they're putting me on a clock, right? So I'm going to have to switch out. And then there's the Farfetch'd. So we can go up to Pidgeotto. So we can weave in and out right here. We can weave in and out. We're going to have to weave into Pidgeotto. It's going to be able to tank a Scolipede hit. and survive unless, you know, they have Giovanni. By the way, this is a key point right here. So if I was playing the Mythical Island Pidgeotto, I would not be able to attack. Yeah, so we got there. So I would not be able to attack, and I wouldn't have been able to pivot like that. So very important there. So yeah, one of the things that I really enjoy about this deck is the fact that you can soak damage and pivot a lot, especially with a lot of the retreat costs being pretty cheap. And that's one of the strengths that a deck like a Pikachu EX has, right? It can soak damage and pivot and all that. So I think that that's like really cool that we can do that as well. And you know, with that in mind, you know, you can't really ask for too much more in some cases with these like rogue style decks. Like I'm able to pivot, I can snipe you, I have pretty good HP if I can get my EX out there. Now everything else outside of that is pretty glassy, is probably the biggest drawback, right? But let's see, we're going into a Froakie, and it looks like we might be playing like a Gyarados deck. Now, you could make the argument that I should have researched, so that way I can have a higher chance of seeing X speed, so I can X speed into Hitmonlee if they play a Magikarp. But I think Hitmonlee's pressure or just presence just kind of makes them probably think twice about attacking already, or putting a Magikarp on the bench. Now, this is fascinating. This is a Marshadow that hits the bench, and all I see are water energy. So really fascinating here. We do have the Pidgeot EX, however, we're not going to be able to attack with it on curve. We're probably just going to have to play it. And the only card that I probably would like to see at this point, yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of one yet. I don't want to say it too quickly. Now, this is definitely an interesting situation, right? Because obviously we're assuming that they have the Frogadier, right? So the Frogadier is going to come down and evolve and put some weird pressure. Okay, so they do play red cards. So we did a really good job of not ripping both the red cards and being in bad position here. So I really like that. I really like that a lot. I really like that a lot. So, okay. So we can go ahead and actually set up a revenge kill with our own Marshadow. Because I get a 150 if I evolve and just wait, huh? Part of me wants to Sabrina and switch, but like not having the X speed is like pretty rough. How behind am I in energies? The thing I'd have to worry about is, yeah, I think I actually just have to be patient. I think I just have to be patient here. Because they do have the fighting energy actually coming up. They're not getting screwed by the energy, so I mean, it's like perfect scenario for them, really. But now, yeah, they have to put the fighting energy on Marshadow. They can't switch it and put the energy on the other Froakie. So that's kind of good for us. Yeah, so now we have the potential to really do some good damage here. Okay, yeah, so we got there. Okay, so we're going second in this game. It's like a water deck. But again, like you're seeing people just every game, they're just like avoiding benching stuff, right? Like that's just kind of the overwhelming theme. And unfortunately, like it's effective sometimes. Like if I don't draw the far-fetched early, or if I can't get to it early, or if I can't like put pressure immediately, and I don't find any parts of the Pidgeot line, like yeah, it gets really awkward. It gets really awkward. But you know, hey, that's just the game sometimes. Okay, so some Starmie Blastoise action. Opponent opened up with Research and Pokeball, so no Misty turn 1. So they're probably just trying to decide if they X-Speed out or not, yeah. So they just X-Speed out. And, you know, that means that they most likely... I would assume that means that they have the Starmie. Right? Because the Starmie is a pretty interesting Pokemon in this matchup, right? So... You know, Starmie basically will have enough bulk if they play stuff like Potion to stay out of range for Marshadow for a little bit, but we'll just see how that plays out. But again, like if we're playing, you know, the best water deck here, we could have taken care of the Magikarp, both scenarios, right? If it was in the active or if it was on the bench. So there's the Misty, and you assume it's going on the Starmie or the Staryu. I wish you could see what it was targeting. It's kind of annoying that you can't. So the Starmie will be in range of Marshadow, which is huge. And opponent's probably not super thrilled about that. It looks like they're going to go in with Squirtle, which is kind of crazy. So right here, if we draw Pidgeotto, I think I just go ahead and commit to Pidgey, but obviously we don't. And I have no problem waiting. You know what? Yeah, let's just X speed out of here. So we have we've used both of our X speeds now, but this puts pressure on the War Turtle potentially coming in as well. If they drop the War Turtle and they don't heal, we can knock it out before it gets to Blastoise. If they attach on the Starmie, we can knock out the Squirtle and have the Marshadow ready to go by the time the Starmie comes in. So we're just kind of doing a lot of footsies here. Yeah, the curveball here is if they play another Squirtle, right, and then they start putting energy on that one and loading up for another Blastoise. Which at that point you just shake your opponent's hand. You know, you just say, "Hey, good game, man. You're just better than me." But yeah, we just take this knockout here. We basically make it to where, hey, you can't really knock out our Farfetch'd, right? If you knock out our Farfetch'd, we're just gonna knock out your Starmie EX. So either they better have blue, they better have a potion. Yeah, and again, these are all cards that they can definitely be playing. Okay, or you can switch into your Articuno. It's also an option. Yeah, switch into Articuno, tank some hits, try to build up, you know, the Squirtle into a Blastoise. All right, that's a scoop. Okay, going into another game here. Let's see what we got. Looks like we're going second into a water deck. We have the Pidgeot line, like entirely in our hand, but you know, when people see that fighting energy, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to put anything on the bench." So, but they're gonna have to. You can't win the game with just Druddigon. Yeah, so let's see what they decide to do here. They probably shouldn't be scared to put down a Magikarp now. Yeah, I don't need to attack. Right, like ideally if they have one Magikarp and they're like, okay, well they didn't play Hitmonlee, well they play the Magikarp and I Sabrina it out, that'd be great. But there's a chance that they use double Pokeball now, so they might just have two Magikarps. Okay, Froakie. I just don't think that there's any reason to accumulate damage on my Pidgeot. It's already going to take 20 and go to 150. So, yeah, not something that I want to, because the real break point is going to be 140, right, for the Gyarados. So I'm trying to play around that. But okay, it looks like they're playing Far-Fetched as well. It's pretty interesting. Okay, so we're going to be able to Pidgeot on curve and try to start sweeping with Pidgeot. So there's the first attack. So we go to 150. Far-Fetched, in theory, would put us at 110. And put us a little bit in range of Gyarados. But Gyarados, they're gonna need Misty, right? Like that's gonna be the big key, is do they have Misty? So there's a Sabrina, which we don't mind. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and block their bench. No, it doesn't. We don't need to block their bench. We don't need to do that. And we don't need to waste the X speed either. See, the fact that they're not putting any damage on our Pidgeot EX is good for us. Now, the big curveball obviously is a Magikarp Misty. However, because we only need one prize and we have Sabrina, we just Sabrina the last prize. So it kind of doesn't matter. But yeah, some people are playing Far-Fetched and Gyarados, so that way they can pressure and like actually fight back without giving up Greninja and Gyarados. And it makes math right on in the mirror match as well. Yeah, so this is just game. So they just didn't have anything. Right, because we just Poke Flute, right? I mean, we can Sabrina or Poke Flute. It really doesn't matter. All right. So there you have it. Some pretty interesting games. Definitely some opponents that, maybe could have played better, but I think that you get the gist of the deck. And that's kind of the purpose of these videos. I mean, it's hard to get the perfect games to put into a video, really showcase it. The only matchup that I would really be interested in and a little bit concerned about is potentially the Serebii matchup with Executor, just because there's some weird games where, if they flip heads, obviously you're probably just going to lose, right? They flip double heads and triple heads and stuff like that. But, ultimately, it's just going to come down to, are you going to be able to line up your Marshadows? Are you going to be able to get that early chip damage with Hitmonlee, on their Serebii to force the early Ericas and so on? And, sometimes your opponent's just going to have it because, that is the only deck that heals and also scales damage, right? So with that in mind, I hope you enjoyed the video and the gameplay. I would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button and getting notifications for my videos as they come out. We do have a winter storm coming through, so look for me to stream on the Purple TV site. I might try to stream on YouTube. It's just the music is the whole issue with streaming on YouTube. But I just want to give everybody a thank you. And, I appreciate you taking time out of your day for me to be background noise, for me to just be entertainment. Maybe you learn something. Maybe you find a new deck that you're able to go ahead and queue and play some games with. Just remember, you can win with anything on the ladder. When you take a deck to a tournament, that's going to depend a lot more on, what matchups you get throughout the tournament. Do you get your worst matchup, 4 times? It's going to be really tough to beat it, right? But if you avoid, all of your worst matchups, or if you avoid your worst matchup the entire tournament run, I mean, there's a very good chance that you could win a tournament. So, always kind of keep that in mind. There is a difference in ladder and tournament play, and you'll see my fellow YouTube friends, put Decklist out there and say that this deck is awesome, this deck is amazing. And like the honest truth is, you can win with anything on the ladder, on the random, right? So always keep that in mind. And again, I hope that you enjoyed the content. And until next time, I'll catch you later. Peace.